Hello there. Today I would like to talk very briefly about cloaks, starting with how to make them. Ideally, you want to start with a good thick piece of wool. I'm using an army surplus blanket. The first step is to fold the blanket over part way. You want to fold it between a third and halfway across. A double layer around your shoulders helps protect you from rain and helps limit heat loss. It's also more comfortable. Folding it lengthwise makes it easier to bundle up your legs when you're sitting down. Folding it widthwise makes it easier to bundle up your arms when you're standing. Once you've folded it, you want to find the middle of the folded edge. You also want to make sure that you don't accidentally unfold the middle. If you did it all right, it should look something like this. Once you've done that, you can sling it over your shoulders. That middle point goes at the back of your neck. The next step after that is to pin it all in place. I'm using a penannular brooch to pin the cloak, but if you don't have one of those, you can just use a big safety pin. In case any of you don't know, this is a penannular brooch. To use one of these, first you flip the pin out, and then you stick it through both layers of cloth, in and out. Then you flip the body over so that the pin passes through the gap in the hoop. After that, you twist it to lock it. And there you go, that's what they did before safety pins. And there you go, quick and easy cloak. The nice thing about cloaks of this style is that it doesn't cost you any fabric. This blanket is still a usable blanket at the end of the day. All I have to do is take the pin out. Now a brief word about the history of cloaks. Cloaks were used by all cultures all around the world throughout all of history, right up until fairly recently. Some were made from fur to keep you warm, others were made from bark or grass to keep you dry. Later on, wool tended to take over, as it's a good compromise between waterproof and warmth. Now I'd like to talk about some of the practical elements of a cloak. I'm going to be speaking about wool cloaks, as that's what I have experience with. The first thing I'd like to note is pretty obvious. A cloak is just a blanket. It creates a nice bubble of warm air around your torso, and you can shift it around to bundle up any parts that might be getting cold. A cloak is very nice to tuck your hands into, as I tend to get very cold fingers. One of the nice things about cloaks is that due to the nature of them, they aren't restricted by what you've got underneath. If, for example, I put on a very thick sweater and then a relatively thin jacket over top of that, I might not be able to move my arms properly. You don't have this problem with cloaks. Something that I've heard people say is that we don't wear cloaks anymore because coats are just better. This is a false dichotomy. You can wear both and they don't interfere with each other. Walking about in winter can be quite tiring. It's harder to keep your balance and you gotta push through the snow. Because of this, if I'm going for a long hike, I like to take a break somewhere in the middle. The issue though is that when you're resting, you're not generating as much heat. This can lead to you getting cold in anywhere that isn't quite as well insulated, like the legs and feet. With a cloak though, when I sit down, I can bundle up and be sealed from the weather right down to my toes. Something else that can happen when you're taking a rest is that snow can accumulate on your clothing. This snow then melts and gets you wet. Being wet and cold is miserable. But in a cloak, because it's relatively far away from the body, the snow doesn't melt so readily, and even if it does, you're not going to feel it. One time I was out for a walk, and the wind picked up suddenly. It was unbelievably cold and hard to even stand from the wind. I curled up in a snowbank and let the snow drift over me, and I waited out the wind, safe in my little warm bubble. Something in winter that can be worse than the cold is overheating. Often once I start moving, I find that I've overdressed. Sweat in winter is very bad. The moisture conducts the heat away from your body. A cloak is very good at preventing overheating. If you feel a little bit uncomfortable, you just flap your wings, and then hey presto, you're fine again. Something to mention is the impediment to your arms. I wear my cloak slightly offset. In this configuration, my right arm is completely unimpeded. However, my left has got a lot of fabric in the way. If I needed both arms, I could throw the cloak over my shoulder, but then it wouldn't be insulating me very well. So I've mentioned the cloak in snow. Let's talk about how it is in other weather. A wool cloak like this is quite good in rain. How good it is in the rain depends on the particle size of the raindrops. If the raindrops are small, this cloak can keep you dry almost indefinitely. Big fat raindrops strike with enough force to get through the cloth in a few minutes, though. The intensity of the rain doesn't seem to matter very much. How effective the cloak is mostly determined by particle size. The only area in which a cloak is not great is in wind. The cloak's got a lot of surface area, and it acts as a bit of a sail if you're walking into the wind. The wind also tends to catch at the corners of it and blow it open, requiring you to hold it shut with your other hand. That being said, it's still a better windbreaker than a coat of similar material, because it's further away from your body, and the cold drafts that make it through have their impact softened. This would of course be different with a fur cloak, which I'd imagine would be completely immune to wind. So, in summary, cloaks are really good. I suppose I could have just opened with that. I think it's a shame that we don't really use them anymore. They look good, they're easy to make, and they're quite practical. I had an idea about cloaks in the modern world. With the pandemic, people tend to do patio visits. I've seen people get cold sitting on the patio and go inside and get blankets. But if they had a cloak in the first place, they'd have their blanket with them already. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.